It's Brielle
and Camilla, and welcome to our video on bones.
Tibia and fibula fractures. Transverse fractures like these are caused by direct strikes to the leg, often in auto accidents. Many of these fractures can be treated with casts, but some require surgical treatment with either rods or plates and screws. Supracondylar humerus fracture, elbow region. This fracture was caused by a fall onto a fully extended arm that hyperextended the elbow joint, bent the joint the wrong way. Because the fracture is so close to the joint, it will have to be treated surgically with plates and screws. Clavicle fracture. A common sports injury, this fracture is also the most common injury to a child during birth. Treatment usually involves immobilizing the corresponding arm with a brace or sling.
Now we're going to move on to the types of bone tissue, starting off with compact bone. Compact bone, also known as cortical bone, is dense, hard, and found in the outer layer of most bones. It provides structural support and protection and is composed of cylindrical units called osteones. The dark spot you can see in the center is the Haversian canal. The Haversian canals are a series of microscopic tubes. They allow blood vessels and nerves to travel through the bone, which supplies oxygen and nutrients to bone cells. Going back to this picture, you can see thin, hair-like threads that seem to be stemming out of the center. These are the canaliculi. They assist in eliminating waste, and they allow communication between osteocytes. And in case you're wondering, osteocytes are just another name for bone cells. In this image, you can see the osteocytes look like thin ovals or lines. The function of osteocytes is to maintain bone homeostasis by regulating the formation of new bone. Now moving on to spongy bone. Spongy bone, also known as cancellous bone, is composed of thin plates called trabeculae. Spongy bone functions in bone growth, shock absorption, and providing support. The darker, more sparse areas in this photo are the red bone marrow. Red bone marrow produces platelets, white blood cells, and red blood cells, which carry oxygen to the rest of the body. The larger pink areas are the trabeculae. Trabeculae provide structural integrity while also allowing for flexibility. In class, Brielle and I had the opportunity to look at both types of bone tissue under a microscope. And in this picture of the compact bone, you can clearly see the osteocytes that I mentioned earlier. And then in this picture of the spongy bone, you can see the trabeculae all throughout. Now we're going to be talking about the 4 different types of bone. Starting off with short bones, they're shaped similarly to a cube and they contain mostly spongy bone. Some example of short bones are the carpals, tarsals, and the patella. Flat bones have a thin, flattened shape with a slight curvature. Some examples of flat bones are the scapula, frontal bone, and occipital bone. Irregular bones vary in shape and structure, therefore they don't fit into any other categories. A few examples of irregular bones are the vertebrae, the mandible, and the zygomatic bone. Long bones are longer than they are wide, and they have a cylindrical shaft with 2 expanded ends. Examples of long bone are the humerus, the radius and ulna, and the femur. Now we're going to go more in depth into the parts of the femur. So we have the femoral head, the femoral neck, and the trochanteric region. Then there's the shaft, condyles, extra-articular and intra-articular. Then there's the epiphysis, metaphysis, and diaphysis. Now we're going to be talking about the types of forces and fractures. Transverse fractures are a complete break in the bone that are perpendicular to the bone's length. In spiral fractures, the fracture wraps around the bone and looks like a corkscrew. In a comminuted fracture, the bone has been shattered into multiple pieces. When applying a bending force to the crayons, both of them resulted in a transverse fracture. When applying a twisting force, they both resulted in a spiral fracture. When using an impact force on the crayons, Brielle's had a transverse fracture and mine had a spiral. In this video, Brielle is demonstrating the bone plate procedure of a femur that is used after a transverse break has occurred. Now here's a question to make sure you are paying attention.
Which part in the image shown of a microscopic bone represents osteocytes? If you have chosen B, you are correct.
Thank you for taking the time to watch our video.